Hi, my name's Coleman Weeks, and I've wrote a lot of books, and well, not a lot of books. I've wrote some books, and I've wrote a lot of blog, and I'd like to share with you the first thing that I wrote. I've been writing it for about 10 years, and it's a book about 9 generations of Florida crackers. And so I hope you enjoy this, and I'm going to read you the intro, and here we go. John Bartow fished under a meager moon, not much more than a silver sliver, but plenty to fish by, or so he thought. The overflowing creek's water stormed past, carried by the rains of summer which complicated his dinner-catching mission. On this night he's flimsy as a weed that grew too fast, and so tired he fears his knuckles will drag the ground, his long, skinny arms and legs slouch in chorus, apparently ready to break. John may be too tired to watch his surroundings while fishing an alligator pit like Lake Okeechobee and its tributaries. A day-long drizzle on horseback always chafed him, and John's soggy day in the saddle was a tough one. His 6.5-foot frame sags as he thinks about the ways rainy days rub you raw. His feet stung fiercely from being tortured in wet boots, his butt as numb as a rock, and he knew his deep to the chill to the bone would not let up until he ate a warm meal. Army life gave John plenty of opportunities to work in the rain. He loved the adventure and the thrill of facing danger every day. Last night's rain washed out any deer signs, so tracking dinner meat was out. That meant fishing to survive for John. He prefers deer steak or pig because it satisfies and was great the next day too. But at this point he'd eat mud onion stew or palmetto heart soup. John doubted he'd get a nibble on his line. The silver water danced with bass and popping catfish, and he knew the black shadows surely teemed with varmints which would suffice. The night was awash in silver, black, and blue, but nothing's pretty when you're so hungry you have a sick belly. The day started out bad, and now it ended that way. This morning's coffee was gritty with too much dirt in it to drink. When John drank his coffee that morning, he growled to himself, "I should wash my hands when I get to my grub. There's more sand and grit in this pot than coffee." He spit out the grit and cursed under his breath and proceeded to sip the top of his next cup, keeping in mind not to drain the dregs. John percolated his coffee in a tin coffee pot over a campfire and drank from his tin cup warmed on the fire's side. He kept the flame close enough for the cup to burn his hands a little when he picked it up. As he drank, John prudently inched it further away from the fire so not to burn his lips. He wished he had some now to fill his empty belly. While John considered the day past, his mare, coughing from the rain, reminds him to hang his dry blanket on the chestnut-colored horse. John still wore his uniform jacket, but cowhide breeches without soggy boots. He stood at the water's edge, peeking out of his jacket with a wool collar over his ears, keeping the mosquitoes off his feet submerged under the water. The mosquitoes hovered so thick he constantly swiped at his face around the eyes and nose while keeping the rest covered. Mosquito bit and rain slogged, John endured enough of the miserable day and reluctantly let go of the chance to catch something to eat. He finally considered to crawl in his sleeping sack when he nearly fell down, nodding off to sleep with his fishing limb crossed over his chest. He daydreamed he was sleeping in his sack when everything started spinning. He woke up just in time to stop from falling in the water. Those catfish would not bite. He might as well skip it and eat tomorrow before he falls asleep in the creek. Moonlit swimming was ill-advised unless you wanted to be eaten. John's mission is to map the giant lake's western shore ahead of his regiment. The Seminole Indians were at home here at the half-million acre Lake Okeechobee, or what they call Lake Walk Across. They control the area. It might take time to kill you if you were a white man, especially in the white man's army. The army had the tribe bunched up here and faced stiff resistance. These Indians from North Florida doggedly stood their ground, repeatedly driven from their homes. It was easy to understand their resentment of the white American settlers who took their lands. The army grabbed the Indians' farms, cattle, hunting lands, and turned them over to the settlers. John was not apprehensive in the least. He had dodged angry Seminoles all his entire life. While John considered sleep a plant, or maybe a turtle floats innocently down the creek. As this flows past, John's survivalist instinct prickles the back of his neck. This feeling wakes him fully as he takes a step backward from the water's edge. His wild-eyed mare bolts into the black, dark woods, apparently feeling a little jumpy herself. The water nearby exploded as if a cannonball had landed. Awestruck, John is slow to react to the blur of white water and stupidly gawks at the alligator twice his size at his feet and is frozen by fear. This monster is wider than his horse. No wonder she ran off. The black beast stood close to 5 foot across his back and stunk of mud very strong. In the silvery blue night, John looks his death in the face. The giant reptile takes a millisecond to whirl 180 degrees, breaking both of John's legs with his tail. This alligator wickedly chomps down on John's thigh and starts rolling them both over faster than John can scream. The only noises heard are the deadly sounds of slaps and crunches, with the occasional hollow thud caused by John's skull smacking the ground. The huge beast busts John's head wide open, but not out of tender mercy, considering the numerous injuries the gator inflicted, breaking most of the bones in John's body. Skull parts and brain matter scatter about as the monster shakes John out as a cat would shake a rat. John never experienced the stench of the gator's rancid maws. His death seemed instant. After a minute of head shaking and death rolling, the gator seems to relax with his dinner. This thorough old gator had lost a few kills, but snuck off after he thought they were dead and secured. Bigger than life, the giant reptile glimmered and seemed to smile. The gruesome beast sat grinning with John's leg in his mouth, with the rest of John trapped beneath him. The smiling 1,000-pound monster lay on top of poor John, crushing the remains of our cavalry scout, while I casually looked off into the woods. After an inexplicable pause, with John's leg firmly in his 3.5-foot-long jaws, the man-eater leisurely slides back in the creek with his future meal. He only eats after he hides a catch for several days, so letting John rot a while makes sense. Deep down inside, the gator felt very frustrated with missing the horse and the month of easy feeding it offered. Tough breaks were common for the big gator, having lived through 60 years of natural beauty at Lake Okeechobee. At one point, he was 12 inches long and did not weigh a quarter pound. He had to fear big bass, many birds, and any bigger gator would become a meal himself. He lost 2 foot of his tail during a near-death experience, and his white left eye was blinded in a fight with a great blue heron he ate a few years ago. At 15 foot long and 1,000 pounds, he didn't find much danger anymore. Staying fed was his biggest concern, as the reptile ate a great deal of meat each month. He always felt like he could eat a horse, like the one that got away. How often could a hungry 1,000-pound reptile get a shot at a horse on Lake Okeechobee? Oh well. A couple 100 pounds tastes better than muddy air. Momentarily satisfied, the giant hides his treasure. Maybe some other animal or gator will try to steal it. Then he can eat it too as a bonus. Up the creek a little, a couple of young Seminole braves came out of the dark, and one said, "Whoo-wee, that gator done ate that boy. Let's go get his horse." Lake Walker crosses one big alligator pit. The two Seminole teenagers watched John because they got a glimpse of his campfire through the trees as they rounded one of the 1,000 bends in the swift-moving, fish-eating creek on their way home. They often roamed to the big river dumping in the north end of the lake and stumbled on John returning from there. They sat in the woods and watched the gator attack. They were stalking John in hopes of stealing his horse, a coup of sorts if he slept through it, a killing if he did not. The two braves knew better than to stand on any bank near that lake. Being raised with big gators attacking their tribe's dugouts or on land at their home down by Fish-Eating Creek is a life-saving education. The old gators would come into the village from the water and eat any dogs, goat, cattle, and people they catch. The young brave's mama would cook a big gator in boiling water over her light-or-not fire to get rid of that strong, muddy flavor an old gator has. Poor John had a gun, but the young brave's father would only have a sharp stick, like his light-or-not walking sticks he carried in the swamps and around the village. He'd run it right into that gator's eye as far as he could if the gator jumped him, which is how Mama usually got the gator in the pot. Them light-or-not limbs are hard as rock, but brittle when put to a test. Breaking off a new sharp end was by no means the end of the fight for the Seminole. Heck, it was an opportunity with a sharper end. Countless early explorers lost their lives to the sharks, alligators, insects, poisonous snakes, and the deadliest foe, their fellow man. Others faced hurricanes with their accompanying tornadoes that demolished any signs of civilization as fast as it arrived. Only the iron will pioneers survived Florida's inherent dangers, and sometimes that wasn't enough. One of the first to attempt Florida's wilderness was De Soto. He landed in Charlotte Harbor in 1539. Once on land, he led his army inland. During his fatal march, he lost pigs, cattle, and horses to the wild swamps. Between his littering of orange seeds, providing wild groves, and his errant livestock creating robust feral populations, his life shaped the state with an impact still felt today. He had an iron will, but he died for trying his luck in Florida. Although the indigenous Calusa tribes put up murderous resistance to De Soto's intrusion, the European invasion eventually killed the tribes with fever, excepting a handful of lucky ones who fled to Cuba or mixed with the Seminole tribe. This book is a compilation of tales that, well, I heard a lot of tales growing up. My grandmother was Cherokee Indian. I've got a good bit of Indian in me. And she passed down tales from her grandmother, and her grandmother remembered tales from her grandmother as the Cherokee did. I also heard tales about how things were back at the turn of the century and how good at cowboys people were and how bad a man they were. And although I didn't use the exact tales that I heard because I didn't want to get anybody upset, I kind of wrote the book about tales that sounded like those tales. They had the same idea behind them, the same morals, the same actions sometimes. But any resemblance to anybody. It's purely accidental. There's not anybody that truly lived in this book. It's just a book about 9 generations of crackers, and I happen to come from a family that's been here for 9 generations. I hope you enjoy my tales, and have a great day.